Hey everybody. Hi, my name is Dr. Gabe, and I am glad to be a part of the Strength for the Journey virtual camping experience. Of course, it's sponsored by the California Conference of the United Methodist Church, and we've got our fearless leader here in California, Los Angeles. I call him Dr. Charles McWells. Hey Charles, as well as his trusty partner in crime, Pastor Paul Hill. Hey Paul, how are you? Hey everybody, I'm glad to be a part of this. Um, Thank you, Charles, for the invitation just to hang around the virtual campgrounds. Shout out to Camp Colby. You all know about that, Angeles National Forest. Next year, no pandemic, no corona, we'll be back camping for real. Meanwhile, enjoy my fireplace, but I'm telling you, it's so hot right now. I was going to try to turn it on, but I'm afraid I would melt right before your eyes while I'm trying to do this. So no fire, just a fireplace. Anyway, it's great to be a part of this, and I'm glad to be a part of this because I think during this time of pandemic, and not just pandemic, what is going on in our world, George Floyd, the pandemic, the civil unrest, rightly so, the uprisings that I think are quite appropriate in order to effect change. It's a lot happening in the world, and it can really trip us up if we're not careful. And I want to talk about that a little bit. I think it's enough to get us all in a state of shock, catastrophizing, and all sorts of things can sort of go through our head when the world seemingly is out of sync. If we're not careful, our own lives will sort of be out of sync. And I want to talk about that. This COVID pandemic has altered all of our schedules, our plans, our lives. And I know it's not easy, and it's a perfect time, oftentimes, to sound off on that F word. But that's precisely what I want to talk about with you today, just a little bit. The use and placement of the F word and what it means. Fear. Fear. I'm talking about that debilitating word that leaves you crippled, emotionally, psychologically, paralyzed, like the dead in the water. Can do nothing, right? And I know some of you are probably thinking I was talking about that other F word. Actually, well, depending on how you might use that or whatever state you might be in when you're saying it could actually lead you to a state of total frustration or climactic bliss. But I'm coming back here to what we're talking about today before I scare you and you have so much fear that you do not watch this video. But anyway, fear. I want you to think about fear. What are you afraid of? What have you been fearing? Has it been stopping you in your life? Whether now, because of the pandemic and everything that's going on in the world, or even before any of these things happened, do you find yourself in a state of fear? So for the moment, I want you to think about over the next 10 minutes, I just want you to think about fear in this way. Fear requires that we walk away from God. You can't fully walk with God and not trust Him. Can you? I don't think so. We get stuck in fear, the fear of the unknown, the fear of our future, the fear of our present, the fear of what will happen. Whatever, it doesn't matter what it is, it's all fear, and it's a walk away from God. When we do this, we then begin to trust our fear more and God less. You get it? We trust our fear more, God less. And when that happens, we get stuck. What do you do when you get stuck? Physiologically, there's something that actually happens to us. There isn't anything that happens to you without this, the brain. I don't know if you can see that. I hope you can. But everything happens here. Everything that you think, everything you touch, everything you feel, everything you say, everything you do initially happens right here. It's a thought that moves the world. I believe thought and intention is really what moves the world. So you got to ask yourself, what's moving your world? Is God in love, which love is God and God is love? Is that moving your world, or is your fear literally moving your world? If that's the case, I suspect you're pretty stagnant at times. I know I have been. It's like that for me. But there's a physiological explanation for it. Fear is an internal sensation. And so when we're anxious, we become avoidant. A lot of things happen in our bodies physiologically. The nervous system is aroused as a result of feeling frustrated, catastrophizing, every kind of negative scenario you can ever think of. And the biggest issue, as I said, is this physiological response, because when you are in fear and you're operating that way, you have alerted and aroused what we call your sympathetic nervous system. All right, everybody's familiar with the fight or flight response. If I say, hey, there's 10 Rottweilers running down the street, come right after you, what are you going to do? You're either going to fight, I don't recommend that, or you're going to run. Run, Forrest, run! I'm Forrest Gump, I'm running. Nonetheless, this happens even with the thought, a fearful thought. Fight or flight response can ensue if we're not careful. And as a result, what happens? The heart races, blood pressure rises, your eyes dilate. I swear, some of you can be so fearful and frustrated, etc. It looked like you just got, if I look into your eyes, it looks like you just took a hit of cocaine. Palms become sweaty. All sort of irrational thought and everything happens. Rational thought just flies right out of the window because we're in a fearful state. Think about the sweaty palms, etc. Where your hands get cold. Has that ever happened to you? I don't know, maybe you were in an interview, or you had to meet with Charles McWells or something like that to do a project or to speak or something, and you got very, very nervous, right? And when this happened, you noticed that your hands were so cold you didn't want to shake anyone's hands. There's a reason for that, because what happens when we get very nervous, the blood rushes away from our extremities, so your fingertips, your toes, etc., all of a sudden they become very cold because there's no blood to warm them. Where has the blood gone? Racing to your heart. Because you alerted your sympathetic nervous system. And we need more blood flow, oxygen, to keep you alive. This is the power of fear. No wonder we can't really move and operate into the areas that we know we've been called to do. Whatever your level of greatness is, it's difficult to do when you're flying in fear, because that means you just essentially are in a holding pattern, suspended in midair, wondering what happened, and you're on your way down. And it doesn't have to be this way, but I understand it because we've all been there. Think about it. Oh, what peace we often forfeit. Oh, what needless pain we bear. All because we do not carry everything to God in prayer. In order to move fear, as I said before, you have to walk away from God, because you are trusting in something greater than God, or you think it's greater. And I'm saying I'm putting me in there too, because I can be this way in my own life at times and have to check myself and go, wait a minute. So what are you going to worship? Because nothing is greater than God. But if I turn my attention away from God to something else, then that becomes my God. My fear becomes my God. He can't help me if I want it, if he wanted to, because I am operating in a state of fear. I'm not allowing him in to do his work. There's nothing bigger than God. When I think about it, it's almost as if we become essentially idolaters. Yeah, we do. We start to worship the fear. And I know you might not think this is true, but think about it. You start to obsess, right? You start to think incessantly about whatever it is that is frightening you, threatening you, whatever the case is. And the more you dwell on that, the less your attention is on God. When the opposite should really be true, we should really be turning our attention toward God and say, here, handle this. It really is a very simple prayer. It doesn't require sackcloth and ashes, but we go down in sackcloth and ashes seemingly to worship this fear, to obsess over the person we want to get us to love us. We're afraid it's not enough love to go around. If I see you loving her or him or them, I'm concerned it's not enough love for me. I'm concerned about my job. I'm concerned about my life. I'm concerned about my schedule. I'm concerned about my living. I'm concerned about my kids. It doesn't matter what it is. All of a sudden, when it becomes debilitating and it takes you away, your attention away from the Creator, that's a form of idolatry. God is very clear. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. When you do, there is no miracle in that. So essentially, how do we beat this? How do we beat this fear? I have three ideas about that. One, you acknowledge. Two, you confront. Three, walk through your wall of fear. To acknowledge it really is to suggest that I understand what happens to me physiologically. All right? It's that amygdala in our brain. And I've talked about this before. It's a structure in the brain, and it is responsible for when we feel threatened. I don't know if you can see this, but there are two blue dots there. Right here, and right there. Can you see? These two blue dots are responsible for the emotional upheaval that happens in our brains, and ultimately that can really transfix us into another area if we're not careful. There's nothing wrong with the threat. It really isn't. There's nothing wrong with having an amygdala. For instance, as I mentioned earlier about the Rottweilers, if I see 10 Rottweilers coming after me down a dark alley, I probably will start running. That's because my amygdala has been alerted and said, danger, danger, danger. What are you going to do? So that's a good thing. It's not a great thing if I see a problem in my life and I sense danger and I'm being threatened and emotionally uncentered and I go, danger, danger, what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to turn my eyes toward Jesus. I'm going to turn my eyes toward God. I'm going to look lovingly into his face. And the thing that seemed so big in my life that I thought I couldn't get past, I'm going to give it to him. So I acknowledge the fear, and then I turn it over to Jesus. And I can smile the rest of the day, right? The next thing is about confronting. I'm going to confront the fear, and I'm going to encourage you to do the same thing. But you don't go in alone. You confront with your partner, your superpower, your super friend, right? Wonder, Twin Power, activate me in the form of my partner, God. I'm not one who has no hope. I trust God. It doesn't matter what it is. So I'm going to confront my fear and say, you big, you bad. But my friend, he's badder. He's a bad mother. Shut your mouth. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? And so it's important that you confront, because it suggests to God that I know that there is an issue, but I trust you to know that you are bigger than the issue. So my attention and my worship, if you will, is back on God. I'm not going to kneel down before the altar of my own fear and start worshiping it and praying to it. That's ridiculous. That doesn't make sense. So you don't have to do it either. And then finally, once you've managed to do all that, then what you need to do is simply walk through your wall of fear. When I started this, I said sometimes we walk away from God, chasing after our fear. I'm suggesting, walk directly toward the fear. What are you going to do? You're going to walk through your wall of fear, because you're not alone. Thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. I hope this makes sense to you all, because it can seem so simplistic, but it's not simplistic. It's the simplicity of the kind of God who is my friend, that has prepared a total win for me. In fact, the only moment of anxiety that I really have to experience, and the same is true for you, is the moment I realize, whoa, something's up. I feel fearful. I feel scared. I feel something. And however long it takes me to literally give that to God. That's it. That's all. That is all that is required. Always waiting, ready and willing to help you. He is willing to carry you through. It's just that simple. So what do I want you to take home as you are preparing to camp some more and then on your way home from the campgrounds? I love this metaphor. Remember that problems should be seen simply for what they are, not inflated by fearful thoughts. Problems should be seen simply for what they are and not inflated by fearful thoughts, okay? 2, it's just as easy to trust in God as it is not to. It really is that simple, y'all. You can either trust in God or not. Remember, there is a reward on either side, whichever you choose. Remember, hell has many mansions too. So you have a choice. Do you want to live in hell's mansion or heaven? And you can have that here on earth. All right? You will never experience the total freedom and bliss that is available to you until you step through your wall of fear and you cross over. You hear me? You will never, ever fully experience freedom and the total bliss that is available to you until you cross over and walk through your wall of fear. You gotta remember, you gotta be careful. That is that very fear that oftentimes keeps you from crossing over. I'm saying, go ahead and cross over. Really, say to yourself right now, I'm willing to cross over. Just be willing to cross over. Help is there. You have to be willing. Transform your mind. I promise you, God will take care of the rest. He's not, do you really think he's going to have you cross over and be like, psych, I was just playing, I'm not going to help you after all? He doesn't do that. But you have to cross over. He's omnipresent. He's already there. And he's right there during the cross as well. So remember, acknowledge, confront, and then simply walk through your wall of fear. Do not inflate your problems, right? Don't inflate the problems. And remember, it's just as easy to trust God as it is not to. So choose to trust him and walk in the mansion of heaven and forsake the mansion of hell. Finally, remember this. There is no prize in heaven for denying yourself your own greatness here on earth because you were so busy trying to help God out with your own redemption. Stop holding yourself back because of fear or for any reason. I'm with you in spirit. I love you. Sincerely, I really do, and I care about you. And it's our job to care about one another, because the only way we're going to get through this crisis that we're facing, and the ones I know to come, is that we've got to care about each other, we've got to love each other and support each other. And remember, handling the dragons and the demons, that's God's business. All he wants is permission from us to do his work. Let it do what it do, baby. All right. Goodbye, everybody. Thank you very much, and I appreciate your listening.